I'm Beth Guckenberger, and this is the Reckless Faith Podcast. Here we are on day 11. I'm here with my friend Rob Hall and colleague with Back to Back Ministries. Thanks, Rob, for being with us.
Beth, as always, glad to be here. Today's day 11. We're in deep water.
I know.
Right? I was thinking about to day 1, and it was like stand in shade. I was like, this is awesome. Mm-hmm. Stand in shade. Think if somebody's giving you shade. It's great. We're now into day 10, 11, 12, and I realize, and what I really appreciate actually about the devotional is sometimes you can do a devotional and it's stand in the shade all the time, every time. But that's not who you are, and that's not what this is.
Yeah.
It's really a chance to do some really deep reflection about your life and about what Jesus is doing in your life. And day 11 really strikes me that way. It's the story that you tell is about a guy who out of his really deep brokenness gets a second chance. And that's Say Yes to Second Chances is the kind of the subtitle of today. And it got me thinking about a time, we've known each other a while, right? Mm-hmm. So a time when you had some serious brokenness, and that's after you had some surgery. Mm-hmm. And I wondered if you'd be willing to tell people about it.
Yeah, this particular conversation that I recorded on this day, it made a mark on me that even things, whether it's by our own hand or someone else's hand, even moments that the enemy intends to derail us or to discourage us or to deactivate us, God can use any of that and all of that, and he will build from it, and what he builds from it will be stronger. And so I can remember when I had the BRCA2 diagnosis, the breast cancer gene diagnosis, one of the first things I knew was going to be true, but I needed to say it out loud to Todd was, if we do this right, we're going to be more like Jesus on the other side. Like, let's embrace the brokenness that is coming to us instead of trying to escape it or hide it or run from it or pretend it's not there. And I mean, I live in the same culture everyone else does. Once people ask you how you are, it's much, much easier to say I'm fine. But I knew that it would be ridiculous to act like I was going to be fine in the season that was ahead. And so what does it look like to admit that I'm not fine, to admit that I need people, or that I was hurting, or that I was confused or scared or tired or broken, or any of the things that I knew were kind of heading my way? Like, what and how was God going to use it? And it ended up being, like, when I look back on that time now, which occupied about 6 months of my life, I think, it was really good. I would do it again 100 times over. I learned these lessons. Like, one of the things I learned was that pain can make us mean. And I'm not really a mean person normally. So imagine, like, the surprise of my family when I got really mean. And we realized that the trigger to that in me was when my pain medication was running off, or I got myself in some place where I was physically uncomfortable, I would get mean. And like, realizing the correlation between unkindness and pain was helpful, because a little bit after all of that, I remember I was at one of my kids' sporting events, and I saw this grandma was taking care of this little boy, and she was being really mean to him. And kind of the pre-surgery Beth would have been judgmental of her, like, don't talk to children that way. And I probably would have tried to sneak them something, like, I don't know, like a sucker or a Hot Wheel car or something. But I was watching her be so mean to him, and instead of being judgmental, I was thinking to myself, I wonder where she's hurting, because there's a relationship there. And what might I do to alleviate her pain instead of judge her for the response that she's having to her pain? And that's just one little example, but man, do I think God can use brokenness.
It's a great example, though. Again, back to the content in day 11, this guy writes a cover letter, and he wonders, he's offered a job, and he wonders if the guy has actually even read the cover letter. Like, dude, do you know who you're really hiring? And his response to that was, hey, we actually see that as almost a benefit. Like, the other side of that kind of pain increases your grace towards other people. Your story about this woman is a perfect example of that. It's really a story about you. Mm-hmm. Like, you had more grace as a result of understanding what pain can do to someone, and perhaps even make someone mean.
Yes. And the exercise at the end of the day, the action step was to write your own version of a cover letter, even if you show it to no one else but Jesus, acknowledging the places where you have suffered, either by your own hand or by the hand of somebody else. And what would it look like to believe that this is actually part of my credentials, instead of something I should be ashamed of or pretend never happened or act like it was no big deal. No, those chapters in our life are part of the human experience. And how could I offer them up to God in the same way I offer all my other gifts, in the same way I offer all my other experiences? Like, could I offer them up, and could you use them in some way to bless the body?
Yeah, I know in Start With Amen, the book that you wrote before this, you kind of go into some detail about that season in your life. And so I don't know that I need to ask you, what was your action like in writing a cover letter? You kind of exposed a lot of that stuff in the book. But the action specifically in day 11, write a cover letter to someone as if you were applying for a job. What would you write to show the brokenness you have come through in your life? And the outcome of that, obviously part of that is your understanding of your own brokenness leads to greater grace.
Yeah, and I ended up thinking I was going to write that cover letter about that season with the breast cancer gene, and I ended up writing it about a dysfunctional relationship I had with a foster child, and just admitting out loud that I was capable of having a dysfunctional relationship with a foster child, and what I learned from it felt like I was inoculated towards it in the future. And so it's a good exercise, and I encourage the listeners to try it.
Yeah, absolutely. Great stuff today. Hey, if you have a reckless faith, a 40-day journey to saying yes, and by this time, if you don't, I mean, we're on day 11. Come on. We hope that the podcast keeps you focused on having meaningful conversations today with God and with other people. If you're here, if you stumbled upon the podcast, someone sends you this episode and you haven't yet gotten a copy, you can find it on Amazon, or for the book and other resources, you can visit backtoback.org/40days. That's BACK, the number 2, BACK.org/40 days.
Oh, thank you for being on this journey towards a more reckless faith. And so until next time.